Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Madeira Beach Board of Commissioners Workshop. Today is May 27th, and the time is 2:02. Interim City Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Lister.
Here.
Commissioner Poe. Here. Commissioner Shantz. Mayor Palladino. Absent.
The first item on today's agenda is the presentation of the green light Pinellas, and this will be moved to the June workshop. Okay. The next item will be the presentation for no tax for tracks. Interim City Clerk, did you?
Yes, we have a presentation today from No Tax for Tracks, and if you could go ahead and guys want to get started, do about a 10-minute presentation and let us know about your topic. 20?
I'll do 15 as fast as I can, but I can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would the Board of Commission please come into the audience so we can see the screen?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I'm wearing you out. Let's see. I wanted to know, I'm Barb.
Front row to the left.
Oh, here. I guess we're waiting for it to sync up. There we go. Perfect. Almost perfect. I'm not used to talking to people behind me, so this is... Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That'd be great. Thank you. Yes, wonderful. Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for, we got a kind of an invitation last Thursday in the mail, and so we reacted as quickly as we could to be here today. And my name is Barb, and I'm the spokesperson for No Tax for Tracks. I've got a lot of information to cover, and I think you'll find it very compelling information. And this information was gathered over the last 3.5 years that I and this gentleman back here have attended all of the PSTA meetings, the commission meetings, the committee meetings, following, including alternative analysis, following just as citizens this issue. Back in 2010, when Hillsborough voted down the 1% sales tax increase referendum, about 2 weeks after that, a friend of mine in Hillsborough called me and said, it's coming your way. And they're having a meeting in December, and so I just out of curiosity went to the meeting, and it was so alarming what I heard as far as kind of what I felt like were the, I don't know, just the fact that it was all decided before it was ever started. And so I decided to stick with it, and so what you're going to see is a lot of their information from PSTA. A lot of these slides are going to be PSTA slides. So basically, I have done a lot of research. I own a 25-year company over in Northeast St. Pete. I'm a long-term care insurance agent for 25 years, and I am a numbers person. And basically, some of the research that I have done has led me to understand more about public transportation. At the end of World War II, 50% of Americans relied on some form of public transportation in urban areas. Then you had the war was over, and the entire country changed, and the baby boom occurred. And by today, Less than 2%, actually 2% of Americans rely on public transportation nationwide, and according to the 2010 census in Pinellas County, 1.6% of our neighbors rely on PSTA, on public transportation. Now this, of course, is our PSTA system. This is our public bus system that we pay for, and this is a $650,000 hybrid bus that PSTA has been in the process of switching over to in the last couple of years, and these buses are $650,000 versus the $400,000 diesel buses that we have always purchased. And we can talk about this later if you care. The PSTA operations budget, are 75% subsidized by taxpayers in the form of federal and state grants of 22%. Passenger fares represent 22% of the operation cost of PSTA. Advertising contributes 3%, and the ad valorem property tax represents 53% of the operations budget, which of course is the subject of the sales tax increase right here. And then in 2014, the operation budget was $63 million for PSTA, which was 5% over 2013. Now you blend in the capital budget of $23 million, and they have this year $87 million to run the public bus system. If you divide that by the number of annual rides, and that's not riders, that's not people, these are rides, the cost per ride is $7. Now, why do I say this? Because if I were to go and jump on a PSTA bus to go to the mall, for example, chances are likely wherever I may live that I might have to transfer at least once or twice, and so each one of those are considered and counted as a ride. So the cost per ride of a PSTA currently is $7, and the average fare after discounts per ride is 91 cents. So currently we are subsidizing each ride by $6 and change, or 87%. Now, in 2002, which is why I was scrambling up here and about to have a heart attack, because it's so important that you be able to see this information. I'm not here to talk to you about my feelings or my subjective ideas, but to show you the facts. And in 2002, this is a PSTA slide, and all I'm going to do is draw your attention to the red bar here in 2002 through 2012, basically right here. This bar shows us all, as homeowners, what happened to our property values over that decade. I know I own a house on the water over in Snail Isle on the other side of town, and along about 2007, I thought I was rich. I was going to retire. I was going to do a reverse mortgage on. I had this all planned out. I thought, wow, this is awesome. You know, I am a wealthy person because my house was off the charts in terms of value. And then, of course, the bubble burst, and our property values went down. Now, of course, PSTA's revenue off of the ad valorem did exactly the same thing. I don't have to tell you folks about this. And then in 2011, in the September budget, PSTA, after they had just hired the new CEO, put forth a 30% increase in the ad valorem property tax for the September 2012 budget, and that was instituted then in 2012. Here's another way of looking at it. Again, this is a PSTA slide. The ad valorem property tax topped out at $38 million, and then in 2007, and then started to decline as the property values went down to a low here of 26.5 in 2011. They passed the tax increase 30% right here, bumped it back up to $33 million. Now, they did that by raising the ad valorem property tax basically to the ceiling. Statutorily, they can only go to 0.75 mils, and they are now at 0.7305. They went from 0.56 to 0.7305. So PSTA raised the taxes on our homes in 2012, but still they continued to outspend their income. This, again, is a PSTA chart, and it shows us the trajectory of their spending from 2002 through 2014 through today. And here you can see that as the property values went up, their spending went up, and then here in 2007, when the bottom dropped out, they slowed down, they let people go and tried to control their spending. And then here's where the property tax of 30% was instituted, and the spending started again. This is an untouched slide, and this shows you this green line, which is November 2014, where the tax referendum is placed on this slide in the hoping that they're going to be bailed out by the 1% sales tax increase, which is massive. Through this same, this is a salary of staff. 2004, you can see that as the ad valorem property went up, they hired and hired from 535, 557, 584. 2007, they were up to 617 employees. Then the bottom dropped out, and it started going down. Here's the property tax increase of 2012, and now they're back up to 592 employees again. In fact, I was at a PSTA meeting last Thursday where they were announcing new people they had hired last week. PSTA CEO Brad Miller warns that if a new sustainable funding source is not found, PSTA services will have to be cut 30% by 2016. And indeed, because of them being basically at the ceiling, they are at a crossroad. They have to transform at great public expense or fix the bus system. And that brings about the highly controversial Greenlight Pinellas campaign. And I know that you probably have all seen that there is even an investigation going on right now by FDOT about the spending that's coming out of the PSTA operations budget in promoting such things as bus wraps across the back and so on and so forth. First of all, the PSTA is talking about the fact that this is really just all about more and more buses, about a 65% increase in bus service, and how badly we need a 65% increase in bus service. But the fact of the matter is, this is the Ernst & Young financial feasibility report that was done last summer, and this page simply shows the capitalization of the project. This again was done by Ernst & Young, and the black bars represent the capitalization of the rail, the trolley car or rail system, and these lines here, the light green, represent the capitalization of the bus additions. And so when you do the numbers, it's $2.5 billion for light rail, and it is $300 million for bus additions. So it's 90% electric rail and 10% bus service that are will be the new additions. Now, Duke Energy is so excited about this that in March they donated $50,000 to Greenlight after a 7% rate hike to us in November. Now, Greenlight Pinellas is a tax swap. It's a massive 14% increase in the Pinellas sales tax rate from 7 to 8%. And for the participating municipalities, the ad valorem property tax now, as I already stated to you, going to PSTA is $32 million. The sales tax increase will generate $148 million the first full year of collection. We get these numbers from Penny for Pinellas. And Ernst & Young took Penny for Pinellas and did the projected growth. In 2017 is when they expect the first year of collection. However, no interlocal agreement currently exists. The last missed deadline at the County Commission was last Tuesday. Over and over, the interlocal agreement has been promised that it will be produced, and it is so tenuous and so it's so tough that there is no interlocal agreement, even though they're out talking to all of the residents about a tax swap. There is no document in place, and it certainly is not in the referendum language. What it is Greenlight Pinellas is an expansion of the tax base to all. They will remove the limitation of a tax per property through the ad valorem and expand it to per person. What does that mean? Well, let's say, for instance, my daughter and I were talking about this. If she and her husband and a couple of kids that are in college are all living under the same roof, before the house would have paid that ad valorem. Now you've got 3-4 property owners, taxpayers that'll be out there purchasing goods and services. Also, so that would be all residents in a house now are going to be subject to the tax. People who rent, the poor, those on fixed incomes, all visitors, tourists, anyone who puts a foot in Pinellas County and makes a purchase will become a taxpayer to PSTA. The increase is enormous. And the old tax, now this is our slide, this is not a PSTA slide, this shows that the $32 million annual ad valorem property tax now will be replaced by this sales tax increase, and you can see this is simply taking Ernst & Young's numbers and applying them to a graph with a 3% assumed growth rate per year in terms of the penny, and you can see, and also there is no sunset. So unlike the Penny for Pinellas, this will go on from here on out once we pass this. This will make Pinellas County the highest sales tax in the state of Florida, which cannot be good for beach business. It cannot be good for tourism. It can't be good for the county. It just cannot be good. PSTA will then take that $140 or $50 million a year and use that as income to apply for proof of repayment to obtain billions in the long-term debt for the capitalization of the project. So we, as residents of Pinellas County, will all be stepping up for that kind of debt. And the sales tax would simply be the way to pay for it. But is there a compelling reason to do this? Is there a need for more public transportation? Some of the false premises this is their brochure off of their website. It also, I have one in my bag over here. They pass these out everywhere. They are building the argument that more than 200,000 additional people and 148,000 new jobs are expected in Pinellas County by 2040. In fact, they say that Greenlight Pinellas will produce 67,000 of those jobs. However, it's not true. This graph was published in the Times on February 16th, just a couple of months ago, and this shows us that here is a million population of Pinellas County, and Pinellas County has lost population. In fact, we lost a Florida House seat in the last census because we lost about 45,000 people in population. And the population projection through 2040 for Pinellas County is not projected to go up by 20%. It's projected to remain stagnant. And Hillsborough is where the growth is expected to happen in the next 25 years. And again, PSTA claims that Greenlight will produce 67,000 new jobs. Well, Charlotte passed their referendum in 1997. Their first line opened 7 years ago. This is Charlotte. This is the loop that goes around Charlotte. I researched what companies opened up in Charlotte in 2013, major companies, and there was a toy company from Germany, and MetLife brought a 1,500 job service center in 2013. The 9-mile Charlotte rail goes right along 21 down to the convention center. So it's only 9 miles going from 7 o'clock down to the convention center. MetLife chose to locate down here on the loop, and the toy company up here. In fact, the county of Mecklenburg County did their annual How Do You Get to Work in Charlotte survey, and this is what they found. In 2013, the streetcar or trolley, 0% used it to get to work. Subway or elevated, 0%. Railroad, 0%. People are still driving their cars. Also, PSTA says they have record ridership on the buses, but I can tell you that the 1.2 million riders, they're talking about rides. You see that's not riders. 1.2 million rides in May, for example. I've gone back as far as 2006 and 2007. These numbers are fairly consistent with what we were experiencing with PSTA back in those years. There has been no big spike, and in fact, right now, ridership is down the last 4 months. But how does PSTA count bus riders? And I explained that to you. One rider can equal as much as 4 to 6 rides. Have you noticed the empty buses? I live over on 4th Street, and I can tell you that you can be standing on a corner over 4th Street, and there can be a bus coming from the north, from the south, from 38th. You'll see 3 and 4 buses coming along. I don't care if it's 9 in the morning or 5 in the afternoon, and see 2 and 3 people on this 40-foot hybrid bus, 2 and 3 people on that one, and maybe one that's totally empty. PSTA last summer, as a part of this process, did a bus study. It's the first time in 20 years they did an independent bus study with a company out of California. We, as taxpayers, paid $700,000 for this bus study, and they determined the no new revenue and the new revenue scenario. You can see that was in July that they came up with the results. This is a bus study slide that was like the epiphany for me. Why do we see so many empty buses? Here it is why. This is the 40 PSTA routes. The gray ones are the buses. The blue are the trolleys. That's Central Avenue trolley. This is St. Pete Beach trolley. The 2 green ones here go across. One of them goes across the Gandy, and this one goes across the Howard Franklin. This is your ridership right here. Top 5 local routes, according to the independent bus study. I did not put these words on here. This is her slide. Top 5 local routes here account for nearly half of the entire system ridership, 46%. And then the trolley service here account for another 13%. So combined, these services account for nearly 60% of the system ridership. I don't think we need more public transportation. In fact, it would be great if some of these routes that we see not so many riders, that we could substitute the $144,000 jitneys that are running all over Sarasota. Another myth is that there's a rail link to Tampa. This is simply not true. It's not a part of the plan, And it was so contentious between No Tax for Tracks and Greenlight Pinellas that the Tampa Bay Business Journal, just a month ago, did an article and said the new Howard Franklin span won't be as rail-ready as some would like. There's a perception out there that the new northbound span of the Howard Franklin will be rail-ready. It's not true, because there's no money in a 10-year plan for a $1 billion bridge. The FDOT budget for the bridge of the northbound replacement is $425 million. In order to have a rail component included in that northbound replacement would cost $1 billion. That article, by the way, is available right here. It's online, and this is a copy of the article. Also, Bus Rapid Transit dedicated lanes. I took this picture off of their website, and this picture shows us a photoshopped 4th Street. Right now, there's a big median on 4th Street. If you all live or go over to 4th Street area, that's disappeared in this picture, and instead we have a dedicated lane for a bus rapid transit here. They have denied this. It too has been a source of contention. And PolitiFact a couple weeks ago did an article and say that Greenlight Pinellas supporters say the plan won't take existing lanes from other vehicles, and we rate this claim mostly false. Speaking of congestion, high speed versus light rail, a lot of people don't know what we're talking about in terms of a train, so to speak, or a trolley car. This is what is on the drawing board for PSTA. It's about a 3-car surface train. It is not elevated. It is not 155 mile per hour like you see in Europe. The average speed, because of stops, this is a 24-mile route from downtown St. Pete through Gateway up to Clearwater with 16 stops, so you can tell that it's not going to get much up to speed, and you would be stopping and going constantly. But the truth is that we did a public records request for the intersections that would be impacted. 41 intersections in Pinellas County will be impacted, where we will be waiting on trains, and I have the copy of those for you today of all of the intersections. In fact, this is what it looks like in Houston when they have a little snafu. Now, the light rail subsidies around the country. PSTA bus system, as I pointed out to you, is already $7 for the cost per ride. In Charlotte, the 9-mile rail, the subsidy is $15.45 per ride. The cost of the ticket is $2. In Houston, ticket cost $2. It's a 7-mile track, $16.28, cost of the ride to the taxpayer. Minneapolis-St. Paul, 12 miles, subsidy $21.34. Let's just say, for instance, you have a family of 4 that takes that rail line and goes to an event, and it's $80 to get there and $80 to get back, and they have paid $30. In fact, I may not be right about that, $16. 2 times 4 times 2. Phoenix, 20 miles, the subsidy is $32.73. The Greenlight Pinellas is the longest, most aggressive project to date, in this list at least, and I'm sure it will be different here. This, by the way, is information from the Federal Transit Administration National Transit Database. The Charlotte Observer, 2 months ago, says the cash-strapped city, state officials seek private dollars for public projects. Mecklenburg County leaders struggle to find a way to pay for the $5 billion worth of unmet transportation projects in the CATS 2030 plan that they passed. Who did Charlotte's financial projections in 1997? Ernst & Young. Penny for Pinellas, there's a lot of concern out there among city councils that the vote on the Greenlight Pinellas and the tax increase could jeopardize the renewal of Penny for Pinellas in 2017. Madeira Beach has approximately $400,000 that comes to your budget in 2014, or roughly $4 million over the 10-year renewal of that project, and it's just going to be around the corner that's going to be up for renewal. And then we have the flood insurance crisis. It's not gone, it's just delayed. And it's going to hit us again in about 4 years. So, you know, the law of unintended consequences, but certainly the flood insurance has been a nightmare. It's been a total nightmare, and we have to be so careful not to be lulled into complacency just because they kick the can down the road. So to recap, there is no expectation of an increase in population in Pinellas County. There is no rail bridge to Tampa that exists in the Greenlight plan. Congestion would get worse and more frustrating. with 41 crossings of surface trains every few minutes, and cars possibly losing lanes to buses and trains. Less than 2% of Pinellas residents rely on PSTA. The tax swap is a massive tax increase. PSTA local tax revenue would leap 300% from $32 million ad valorem to $143 million sales tax per year, and the subsidy for the taxpayers on public transportation could go from $7 a ride to as much as $15 a ride or more. There is just no need in Pinellas County, and this is my last slide, to tell you that we want to put their foot to the fire to save the bus system for those who depend on public transportation and not start taxing them. Endorsing this plan on behalf of your town, we hope you agree, is the wrong thing to do. So this will be the choice in November 4th, 2014, and I'll be glad to take your questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you guys could speak in the microphone so the people watching at home could hear, please. Yes, of course. There you go.
Tom Farrell from Pruitt Drive. Aside from the buses and the trains and this other stuff, PSA also provides care ride service for wheelchair-stricken people,
Right,
to doctors or whatever they want to do.
right.
And there's this amount we pay for that. But I
And
know
what? And what?
there is an amount we pay per ride.
Yes.
Which is, certainly not as much as the cost of providing that ride.
No.
Are there numbers for providing that service in their total numbers here? I didn't see that mentioned.
Yes, actually they are. That's the DART program.
Yes.
And so the DART program is included in this, all these budgeted numbers includes DART.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That would not be impacted. Yeah.
I just have a question about, you said the route that's being proposed is a 24-mile route. Is there currently bus service that would take me that same route from St. Petersburg to Clearwater
Yeah.
Gateway?
That's a great question. You have to make transfers and you have to stop. I mean, it takes forever. So we have proposed, now there's no way in this presentation that you can cover everything, but you bring up an excellent point. We say put an express bus from downtown St. Pete through Gateway to downtown Clearwater, and let's see what the ridership is. An express bus would be just maybe 2 or 3 or 4 stops between those 2 points, and let's see what the demand is for that service. But even that, you're still going to have 16 stops on the rail. So, it's not an apples to apples, but let's see what the demand is for that.
Right.
Great
Okay.
point.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to expand on that because I asked that very same question. My husband did also of a city councilman in St. Petersburg who's very much in favor of this. And basically his response was, well, we haven't done that. In other words, parallel the route of the train so that we can see what the demand is, block for block. There is the 52, and it runs somewhat like that, but not exactly. And so the response was, well, we haven't done that because we're really not sure where the route's going to be. So all of the presentation of the routing and the proposal that we will be voting on is still very much up in the air. Thank you.
Questions? Questions from any of you all? No? I just want to close by saying that as nicely as I can say this, because I don't want to say it in any other way, but to say how shocked I was that PSTA did not stay here today and present side by side, because it has been done at many places where we have presented side by side, and I think that that's not the right thing to do. So I was willing to come at the last minute and be on this, and so I just am disappointed at that out of our government. So thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene. Convene now for our workshop. The time is now 2:37. The next item on the agenda today will be the presentation on crosswalks, educating the public, and this is by Deputy John Luckett.
Afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Very briefly, and I just asked to come up here to kind of just explain and kind of give an overview of crosswalks. I think there is a big misconception from time to time on how stop walks and crosswalks work and what a car or vehicle's duty is versus a pedestrian's. The bottom line is nobody's going to win if somebody has a crash, whether it's in Madeira or Pinellas, anywhere else in Pinellas County. Nobody's going to win. The driver is going to be stressed, have nightmares, whether he was at fault or not. The pedestrian, if they live, there is not going to be something that's easily recoverable. The thing that I want to relay, especially to the pedestrians, because obviously in a car versus a pedestrian, the pedestrian is already at a disadvantage. The biggest thing is that no matter what you think in your head, you have a legal right to do. That you think you have a legal right to jump into that crosswalk, you still have to be extremely vigilant and diligent when you're doing so, because no matter who's at fault, the pedestrian's going to lose. With the tourists we have here, I constantly, the sheriff's office, and I've even seen some of the city employees, constantly kind of telling people about the crosswalks and using the crosswalks. That at least puts them in an area that is more recognizable to vehicles, and the drivers may be paying more attention to it. But the bottom line is, even with the DOT crosswalks that have been set up with the flashing lights, we see people all the time that hit that button and then immediately jump out into the road because the lights are flashing, now I can go. That is not what that means. Technically, under Florida statute, a pedestrian never has a right-of-way to step into a road. The only time the pedestrian has a right-of-way in that roadway is if the vehicle has slowed or yielded to him or her, or if the vehicle is so far away that they can safely enter the crosswalk, allowing the vehicle plenty of time to stop. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's not push those buttons, lights start flashing, jump in the road. You have to wait. You have to be careful. Because even though you might have a majority of drivers visiting the beaches out here paying attention, you have a lot of distracted drivers. They're looking at Johns Pass Village. They're looking at all the incredible things you have out here and that you've built as a city over the years, and they're not necessarily looking for that person to step off the curb. So it's critical that we constantly be mindful of that. As drivers, obviously, it's important if you're in a beach area, if you're in a populated area like Madeira Way, critical that you pay attention for pedestrians because people don't pay attention. They do step off the road. It happens. Luckily, and thank God, here in Madeira Beach, we have not had any serious fatalities, any serious crashes involving pedestrians this year. I want to see it stay this way. I'm available to talk to any of the residents in Madeira Beach, to educate them, to meet with groups, to meet with the churches that are here. Any community group that wants to talk about it and be educated, I'll be glad to do that. But the bottom line is, whether you think you have the right or not as a pedestrian, you have to exercise common sense because you're not going to win against the car, even if that driver ends up getting cited. When a person is in the crosswalk, though, a driver is responsible at that point to stop, remain stopped. They cannot proceed until the pedestrian is on the other side of the road. So just because the pedestrian has passed the front of their car or their hood, they can't go. They have to wait till that person gets on the other side of the road in the opposing lanes of traffic, then they can proceed forward. A lot of people don't realize that. It's also we've caught several people out here doing this already. I don't know if it's because the car wasn't paying attention or what, but it is a $166 ticket if you're caught going around a vehicle that is stopped at a crosswalk. So if a car stops, a pedestrian starts to go out, and you zip around them because you're going to beat the pedestrian, you're going to get ticketed, especially if it's out here. The deputies out here are very mindful of it. The city has been very supportive in our efforts to try to squash anybody from getting hurt and violating the traffic laws at those areas. And we're going to enforce it to the fullest because we don't want to see anybody get hurt this season. So if you have any questions?
I have one, Deputy Lockett.
Yes, ma'am.
I know the cities to the north of us, they give them like a warning, the pedestrians a warning the first time. Then after that, then they start giving out tickets. Is that something that we might eventually come around to do the same thing?
We do that on a regular basis. There's actually a Florida Department of Transportation grant that the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office obtained several years ago. As a part of that grant, we do targeted enforcement several times a month. I know as recently as last month, we had 4 days. It's basically almost like an off-duty detail, where not the deputies that are working here. Those guys are looking for this all the time. But we actually bring in extra deputies, 2 of them each time, to focus on nothing but giving warnings and or tickets if they see that the person has been given prior warnings. What we generally do at the Sheriff's Office is educate. So if it's the first time you've ever been stopped, unless it was grossly negligent, you're going to get a warning. If you've been warned before or it was grossly negligent, you're going to get that ticket or worse. But I can get you the exact numbers, but I'll tell you that the warnings in just Madera, not counting Reddington or the other cities that are doing these details, just the warnings are probably into the couple few hundreds for this year alone.
As I noticed a couple weeks ago when we had spring break here, it was nothing unusual to see anyone just step off the curb anywhere to cross the street.
Yeah.
And there'll be traffic coming down Gulf Boulevard beyond the crosswalk, and all of a sudden you start stepping on your brakes and you hear the screeching behind you and the cars coming up behind you because they may not be paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's only because someone just decided just to cross the street at whim
Yeah.
and not use a crosswalk.
And that amazes me even more, is you'll have a whole group of people using the crosswalk, and then I don't know if it's somebody that just wants to beat the clock or what, but 20 feet away from the crosswalk, they'll start going in between cars. Extremely dangerous. I mean, the crosswalks are there for a reason. It at least should alert our drivers that there's a potential for a person to be there. There's other sections of the city that we don't have, and this is across the county, that we don't have crosswalks for great distances. You have to be careful. I understand people are going to cross the street, that it's going to happen, but you have to be careful. You still don't have the right of way to step out in front of that car. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just trying to educate people that we're in a hurry, we want to go to the beach, we all feel like we're entitled once we push those crosswalks, but we're
That's
not.
true.
Well, we are warning the heck out of people. I'll tell you that right
That's
now.
good. 'Cause I don't want
The
anything
deputies
to
that work
happen.
for you in the city and other ones that are coming in to help.
We'd like to have all the tourists come back again next year.
We will. Matter of fact, on June 5th, which is just a week away, we have 5 additional bike officers in addition to myself that will be here for several hours in the afternoon, evening, dinner time hours, focusing on not only crime prevention, but focusing on crosswalks and pedestrian safety. So you'll see a lot of bike guys out here. It's not a big raid or anything.
Okay.
They're helping your community.
Good job, thank you.
Yes, sure.
Excuse me, could you please identify by name and address?
You should,
You can-
wait, you need to come up to the
hold on
podium,
just a
sir.
minute.
We'll share the mic. Oh, there you go.
I understand protocol. James Moore, 13708 Salem Street. First, if someone should get a warning, it's a civil, not a criminal.
It could be criminal.
But if it's a warning,
99%, you could get a criminal warning.
Okay.
If somebody's recklessly driving, which is a criminal statute, they could still get a warning. It's probably not going to happen.
what about the pedestrian?
Same thing. They could get a warning or a ticket, which is for a pedestrian, $62.50 right now.
I was just curious if it was a civil offense or a criminal offense.
Most of your pedestrian, unless it's reckless or careless, and almost all your pedestrians are non-criminal.
Okay.
There are some that are criminal. For example, we're starting to get down at Johns Pass individuals that may or may not be allowed to be out there and do it, but selling goods. If you step into a roadway to sell something, it becomes criminal.
Sure. Well,
But
and
most of them are civil.
is there a schedule to add the flashing lights further down Gulf Boulevard?
There's several of them that you'd have to ask the city for specifics, but I know from a Department of Transportation meeting, there's several that are going to be done this summer.
Church by the Sea?
That I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that you can get with the city later. They can tell you. You bet.
Thank you,
Thank you
Deputy.
for your time, Commissioners.
The next item on the agenda is discussion on amendments to the chronic nuisance ordinance, and I'll give this to Commissioner Poe.
As you guys all know, we passed this in 2012. We've kind of been holding off to make any adjustments until we make sure that we don't have to do this one more time. There are 7 items for VOP, that's for violation of probation on here. You have no idea how it irks me when we have a VOP and we can't use it. So I'm asking that we add those to our chronic nuisance. The next one is a felony battery domestic related, resisting arrest without violence, child abuse, neglect of elderly or disabled adult, and stalking. These are all things that I have researched and we have actually found in Madeira Beach or the surrounding counties. So anything that we can put on our chronic nuisance is just gonna make it that much stronger. And right now, none of these are on it. Is there any problem with any of those, Tom? Before I go on to the next one?
Yeah, I don't foresee there to be any problems. The only thing I would suggest to you is that you may want to consider increasing either the number of possible nuisance violations, in other words, from 3 and 30 days to, some period of time longer than that if you wanted to do that. And then the other question is that even if it's been noticed to be a violation of probation, we would have to make sure that we verify that it in fact has been found to be a violation of probation. It's not being alleged. We'd have to actually follow through with that, and I guess the Sheriff's Department could help us out with that. But those are the only 2 thoughts I had is do we want to include more hits, if you want to call it that, or do you want to leave it alone? But right now,
Well, let me prefer with Deputy Lucky on that. Do you think we had to allow more? So instead of doing the 3 a month, now you want to do 5 a month?
no, I'm just suggesting that may be something that you look at, because these are people that have already been convicted of these crimes, and they're, it may be something as simple as, for example, they didn't pay the fee that they were supposed to. I don't do any criminal work, so maybe the deputy could tell us, but a violation of these things is that because you didn't pay a fee or you didn't make an appointment or something, and would you want to really consider that to be, a nuisance?
Well, usually when you pull up the police reports, it has an arrest date on it for it. And those were the only ones that I went by, were the ones that were actually arrested for it, for the violation. But Deputy Lucky probably knows that inside and out.
Might be able to add a little bit to that. Generally, what we look at, and the probation department looks at for violation of probation, are the specific conditions lined out in their release. Usually fines aren't attached to those conditions. They might be attached to a court ruling, and they might bring them back into court for something, but probation are usually things such as a curfew, no alcohol, no other crimes, no other acts of domestic battery. So it's usually stipulations like that. The fines are usually more of a court schedule that they might get a warrant issued for not paying them, but not through probation, generally.
And as far as increasing it, I'm not so sure. I mean, we have a hard enough time, with the 3, mostly because quite frankly, the deputy was pretty good at getting the landlords to comply. Okay. I'll go for that one, whatever you say. The other one is we have been talking about possibly adding something for the short-term rentals in here.
That's one's a difficult one, Commissioner Poe, only because based off of the next topic or later on in the agenda, I think it's going to be difficult to tell right now, how many are grandfathered in and how many we're gonna have to work on complying with, that would be one where I would be more apt to tell you, let's wait that out 6 months, and then if we need to add verbiage in there about short-term rentals to add it to the chronic nuisance ordinance, and that would be a reason to bring it back to the BOC for an amendment. Only because I just don't know what the impact of this whole thing is gonna be, to be quite honest with you. I'd rather keep one less variable out of the equation if possible.
Okay, we definitely like it. I think so too.
I think it's just gonna be one more thing that confuses people.
Okay.
You know, to be quite honest with you, it's just one less hand in the cookie jar. Let's leave it out. But if we find that it does need to be included, well, you know, there's no shame in bringing this back again in another,
Okay.
6 months.
The other one is kind of complicated, and I don't know if Deputy Lawson's had a chance to talk to you about this or not. We're trying to figure out some way, since our biggest problem lately seems to be that the property owners, when they rent these properties, are now saying to the people, if you get caught on my property, I'm going to evict you. So therefore, they go down the street and make their deals, but then they go right back to the apartment. I know Luckett and Lawson both have been out visiting people after this has happened. Is there any way that we could change it to say in city? I mean, let's say they're not on the property, but they still live here. How can we fix it so that they can't just walk down the street, make their drug deal, and then go back home? I'm probably not explaining that right.
No, I understand what you're saying. You know, our focus has been before is to stop violations on certain parcels or certain properties or residential properties within the city. And the idea was, originally was to stop that activity in those locations. And what you're doing, you're basically saying is I want to stop that activity in any location within the city. And that's not how the Chapter 162, which is the code enforcement statute, is set up. It's specifically set up so that it references violations on particular properties. So I think that that would be a slippery slope in trying to find a violation. You know, if there was going to be a violation, if they were down the street and they were at the convenience store, for example, then you cite that convenience store owner. If they were at a restaurant and then they went back to their home, you'd cite them at the restaurant. So you can still get the same thing, but I don't think that that's really what you want to do, is expose the city. First of all, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to prove. What we don't want is we don't want to open up the entire chronic nuisance ordinance to become vague and ambiguous in the way we enforce it. So I would say let's not go down that path. We could still get them at the locations where the criminal activity is occurring.
We just can't go back to the property owner that rented to you.
No, but we can get that business owner that is allowing it to happen in their parking lot. So you're going to take care of the activity, but you're just going to be citing different people.
Okay. The only other thing on it was, let's say we have a property owner that owns 4 pieces of property that's a constant arrest in every piece of property. Is there any way to change that to, we're going after the property owner anyway. Can we go after the property owner and forget that they were arrested at this piece of property, even though they don't live at this piece of property? The owner owns them all.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So if the criminal activity occurs at property 1 and they live at property 3, well, we're going to cite the property owner of property 1. It just so happens to be the same one as 3.
Okay.
So they have to bring property 1 into compliance by way of coming up with that plan and go through that process. And if they don't do what the city wants, then it goes to the special magistrate and it goes through that process. So you would still get what you need to get. You would get that property owner ultimately in compliance or a fine.
I wanted to clarify that. I think if I understand the problem correct that we're having there, it's not the person living at this property going to this property. It's that the landlord has 3 properties within the same block even, and the question is, since it's the same landlord for each of those 3 properties, can he be cited if one incident occurs at property 1, one incident occurs at property 3, the third incident occurs at property, the same property again? Can the landlord be responsible for that 30-day window for 3 incidents, even though it physically was 2 different addresses?
Yeah, and I think that that's where we were going before, and that is that it's property-based.
Right.
And so it would be 3 violations at property 1, 3 violations at property 2, and so on,
regardless of the fact that he owns all those properties.
regardless of that fact. Regardless of whether one's a residential property, one's a commercial property, they're all residential properties, you could still get that same point across. And it may be that you want to do it a little bit different. If you want to get to that person and you don't want to do it through the chronic nuisance ordinance, you can always cite them for one property and through code enforcement, and then you can get them as a repeat violator on the second property. So you got the higher fines. The problem is that you don't have that special assessment process. So you could double up just doing it by code enforcement, but you wouldn't have the special assessment.
Mr. Trask, if I throw one other question out there, what would be your opinion on something being added in there if we could document through sworn testimony or statements that the landlord had in fact threatened or coerced his residents to not report acts of crimes to authorities? Could that in and of itself be a violation of the ordinance, or no? Or could that be added in there as, you know, if we've had one instance in town where a landlord has been said and told to tell people, you will be evicted if you report this, and I get fined for chronic nuisance. Is there a way to address that, or you don't see that as a?
I need to think about that.
I figure. Sorry to throw you under the
Yeah.
bus there, but that just actually has come up recently that we've got information that at least one person in town has done that.
But what violation of, is it a violation of
I'll
the
tell you what-
state statute or
Yes.
city code, or?
I'll tell you what the specific incident was. It was a attempted burglary, and the person did not call me or the other deputies that work this area for about 3 weeks, and then they just mentioned it in passing and said, I do not want to officially report it because I was told I would get evicted.
But the violation, you know, the landlord telling that tenant or that person, that's not a violation
That's what I
of
was
the
wondering.
code.
Okay.
That's not, and that's the action that you really want to get after.
Yeah.
Is it is him telling him that a violation of the city code or state statute? And if it's not,
Yeah,
then it doesn't.
not currently, no.
It doesn't fall into that.
Okay.
It's not a violation of any code, so how can we hold him to it?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good to add the items that we've talked about prior to talking about short-term rentals. And we want to increase it from 30 days to 45 days.
I think about that, there's no reason to increase it to 30 to 45 days.
John, you tell them what the reason is.
Again, I wasn't here in 2012, so all the facts stuff that went into that. And there might be legal precedent that Mr. Trask would know that we don't want to extend it out. But we've had a few properties that literally hit the 32-day mark, the 36-day mark. So it would be a benefit. I don't see it as a major widespread problem. We've only had a couple of specific instances that's happened since I've been here. But
Very frustrating.
it is.
It's so close.
But again, I don't know what the legal precedence on that 30-day was.
There is none. There is none at this
Okay.
point. So, okay.
I just didn't know if the key was increasing the number of infractions and increasing the number of days. That definitely makes sense. But
No,
the number of days that they have to behave, that makes sense.
okay. Well, I agree with you on the others. I'm sorry we didn't get to communicate on those before the meeting.
Okay, so at this point, is the direction then of the commission to bring back a draft of the chronic nuisance ordinance, including these violations, and changing the provision 3 violations in 30 days to 3 violations in 45 days? And of course, there'll be 2 public hearings and an ordinance to read.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see any no's, so I'll work on that then. Okay.
And Lawson just walked in too. We're good? Okay.
All right. The next item on the agenda would be update on the library board applicants. Mr. City Manager?
Mrs. Vice Mayor, you got 2 applications in your packet. Take a look at them, review them, and then communicate your number 1 choice, and then obviously your subsequent choice to the city clerk's office if Amy's back, or to C, and we'll tabulate those and report them out. Probably at a special meeting, and then we're in no rush because the library board's on hiatus until September. So we'll probably report that at the next BOC, and then you can do an appointment in either July or August and get them ready to serve then in September.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So you've got a sheet, and, however you want to do it, just indicate your number 1 and your number 2 choice. That's all you've got are 2 applicants to C or Amy's office, let's say within the next 2 weeks. And then we'll take it from there, report out what the responses were, and then we'll go ahead and get going on the appointment.
Okay. Okay, then we'll just move on. The next item on the agenda is discussion of firefighter salary adjustment. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, let me start this, and then I'll hand it off to Vince. And this is a slippery slope, and this is one of those times where you have to make a difficult decision, and I don't envy the spot that you sit in, but let me give you the specifics, and then we can go from there. Since I've come to Madeira Beach, and these aren't related, I would say easily 2/3 of our fire department has turned over. And so you say, well, what is the reason for that? And at the end of the day, and I think I emailed this to you, it all comes down to one reason. It's every other Friday. And we pay a rock bottom starting salary for beginning firefighters. So when you take everything into consideration, training, gear, uniforms, so on and so forth, when you're turning that number of employees over on a 3-man shift, a 24/7 operation, you have to take recognition of that. The firefighters are right in the middle of a 3-year contract, approximately. So the way to do this, frankly, is to beef up some salary ranges. Frankly, to get them to, I've always said this, we shouldn't be leading the pack, but we don't need to be the dead last either. To get them in the median range, the average range, you're probably looking at about a 5% salary increase immediately. And that's doable. That's financially possible with the plan that Vince and I have derived. The firefighters have unofficially approved of this plan. Their plan was quite a bit richer. Vince and I worked with them and the chief over a number of months and got them to where we are at, and everybody's on the same page and appreciates, the positions that everybody is in. But what you're going to do then is you're going to reopen their contract midstream. That's not very common, but it happens, and it happens for a number of different reasons. But one is you don't need to have a constant turnover in the fire department. We run a very minimal shift. Every time somebody is gone, if we've got a vacancy right now, it's overtime, and that budget gets exhausted. Guys call in sick, they get to take vacations, they've got days off, and so we really kind of pay through the nose. And so Vince and I put together something that I think is financially sound for you. That being said, there's a number of categories within Madeira Beach that are in this same situation. And the reason why the firefighters, they're a protected class, they're emergency personnel, we depend on them for a lot, and they might be one of the first ones that we need to address. But there are other categories as well that I think you need to take a look at. And, you freeze salary scales, you freeze steps, you freeze cost of living increases when times are bad. Right now we're okay. And so maybe it's time to, look at these and adjust them. I'm currently putting together a plan for the non-represented employees, which frankly is everybody other than the firefighters. But if you jump in on this, be ready, because there's going to be other classifications of employees, and I can tell you who they are, and they're right. They might be rock bottom as well, and we don't need to be paying rock bottom salaries now that we've kind of reinvented what we're doing here. So with that being said, I can hand it off to Vince. Vince can walk you through it, but the other issue that I took with the firefighters, and I concur with them, is we have like an entry-level firefighter, a lieutenant, and then the chief. And so if you're an entry-level firefighter, you got hired 2 years ago, and you're, the 3 lieutenants are in, let's say, 40 or 50 years old, you have 15 years to wait to maybe gravitate or get promoted to the next position. And what a lot of fire departments have is a driver's position. We don't have that in their contract. But what we do is pay a stipend for that. Well, in this instance, what we'd like to do is create a position of driver. They'd have to qualify for it. They'd have to test into it, that type of thing. And then they get paid that stipend, and it's a little bit healthier than what we're paying, but frankly, it's as close to a wash, I think, as you can get. So now there's another level that these guys can gravitate to, so you don't hit that ceiling so fast. And frankly, some of these younger guys that are getting hired see that ceiling immediately, and it might be 20 years until they can get promoted to the next level. Well, this driver's position creates, another tier. So with that, Vince, I'll hand it off to you. You can walk them through the numbers, and then we can discuss it further if you want to move on.
Yeah, sure. So I can just kind of go through some of the more details of what Shane was talking about. A couple months ago, IAFF proposed a variation of their step plan to us. So Shane and I and my staff went through the proposal and tried to pick through it to figure out what the real financial implications were. And it was quite rich off the top, and I don't know if everybody fully realized that exactly. So initially it included a proposal for condensing the step plan. It included a base increase, some additional benefits with some financial implications, and the new driver pay. So we went through and costed out each of those items. My staff went through that quite a few times, and we came up with real numbers for all the various options. So then Shane and I just kind of walked through each of those to make sure everyone understood what the full implication was for each of the various proposals on the table. And just like Shane said, some of the concerns were definitely valid. For example, the lieutenant paramedic position, step 1, or I guess it's step 3 actually, they don't have a step 1 or 2, was something like $3,000 less than the next lowest survey city, which put them at the total bottom of the comparison that they provided. So some of the factors were definitely valid and worth considering. So ultimately, they were very agreeable to working with us and trying to come out with some kind of tentative agreement. Shane and I met with them and the chief several times, and ultimately what we came up with as a tentative agreement was a 5% base increase. So essentially, we're taking their entire existing step plan, steps 1 through 14, and increasing each of those steps by 5%, which means that everyone here would receive an immediate 5% increase, and any new firefighters would receive the according increase to get them on their step 1 once they get hired. On top of that, we would include the new driver pay, which I believe we've talked about adding. There would be 3 driver positions. Each of those would include a specific percentage increase according to classifications that the firefighters themselves, I believe, have established for themselves. So those 2 factors are pretty much the meat of the new agreement. And I don't know if you want me to propose. I have the revised step plan and what that would look like, and that's what we actually proposed to them, at least tentatively, a couple weeks ago. And if you want to see that, I've got it here. If not, we can just talk about it at a broader level. But at least for the time being, I've built that into the budget for next year, and it looks like we'll be able to make that happen. At the end of the day, it's about a $40,000 total general fund impact. I do.
So you're telling me there's 14 steps for a payment?
Correct.
Top to bottom?
Yep.
And we're having a problem with interest.
It's 14 steps, and that part has not changed.
Well, in the 14 steps, the reason that's an issue for the firefighters is you don't max out until, that's a lot of steps, and that's probably the most you'll see in a contract like this. So they wanted to condense that, but when you couple that along with everything else, I agree with Vince. I think they put together something that made, it was common sense was the reason behind it, but when you priced it out, it was just a little rich, a little too much to do all at once. But again, I think you'll agree, we've come out and said we support our firefighters, we support our fire department, we're building a new firehouse, all those things. At the end of the day, we don't need to be paying rock bottom salaries so I can train these guys. I was going to say kids, they're my age. Train them so St. Pete can hire them away in a year and a half. And the one thing, I'm sorry I had to step out for a second, but the one thing that we've included in this, and we've had some success with it, is when we hire on a new firefighter, they have to sign a 3-year contract with us. And they have to stay for those 3 years, and if they choose to leave within those 3 years, that's fine, but they have to pay us back for all their training, their gear, so on and so forth. So they're making a 3-year commitment to us, and we've been, there were guys that I was here when they were hired and have already been gone, and I've only been here for 2.5 years, so you can see how that's happening. Now we're gonna lose out to St. Pete on a number and other bigger fire departments because there might be more action there and those types of things, and that's fine. I mean, we're never gonna be the apex of the fire department action, so to speak, but at the end of the day, there's no reason, if we're going to stay in the business, so to speak, there's no reason to be paying the absolute bottom salary in our comparables. And this catches them up. And, not everyone held back on firefighter, step freezes or COLA increases through the recession. And so when we took a time out, and they agreed to it, if you remember, and I wasn't here when they did it, but they said, listen, we know times are bad, we'll stay put. But when times are good, catch us up. Well, the time is now, I guess. So it's up to you. But again, and I'm working this into the budget with Vince. We're going to do more of this, and this is maybe just step one. But I think we have to start somewhere. And this all comes along with the reinvention of what we're doing here. But we need to pay some comparable salaries, or we're going to lose good employees. Your department head team's the next one, your administrative staff, sanitation department, we're kind of in the same boat in regards to a lot of these positions. And it's not going to take much to get caught up, but I'd hate to be rock bottom on some of these salaries. Actually, Elaine, can you push the mic over there? We just got a call from the reporters. Everybody's watching and they can't hear us, so we're supposed to use our mics as best we can.
Do you intend for this to happen immediately, or are you planning to do this for the new budget?
What I'd like to do is implement it as soon as possible, because it would really stop the bleeding, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I see we've got the rep from the fire department in the audience. They have to officially take a vote and do all that, and you have to officially ratify it. You're not going to ratify it until they do, and I've communicated that to their union representation, and they'd be ready to go with a ratified vote. I mean, I think this is okay to play our cards. They're going to ratify it, okay? So we would be ready to go for the Board of Commissioners meeting in June. Mm-hmm. And I strongly recommend that we do this sooner than later, especially being in the spot that we are, where we don't have to go through extreme measures to afford it, because our guys are getting recruited, just like any professional sports team. The good guys are going to get recruited to where the money's at, and they're not asking to be number one. They just want to be in a competitive state, and that's not too much to ask.
Yep, that's what's fair. We need to be.
Right.
We don't need to be at the top, but we need to be an average. We need to be.
I'm fine with average in this instance. So,
exactly.
And again, don't let that driver's position scare you, because we're already in that game. We just don't have the title of it in their contract. So this is something I didn't get a chance to talk to Tom Trask. I've been kind of working with Tom Gonzalez on this very minorly, to be quite honest. And so we can work with either one of the attorneys to just put a quick addendum together. It would just be a new salary scale, but we'd have to probably put some qualifying language in there in regards to the driver's position. That's stuff that they could work up. In fact, their union leadership said that they've got that type of verbiage. Tom, he said that he has something that he could write up and provide to you, and you could edit it from there. So if this is something you're interested in, my only concern is that, again, slippery slope sounds negative, but we have other areas that we need to address as well, and so be ready for that.
Well, I think, this is my opinion, perhaps not shared by all, but you need to be expedient. Because these people have been there waiting and hoping, and they've been mistreated along the way. There's been so many things that have happened in this city that I'm ashamed to even discuss. But they have earned it. They need it in their hand. Because when you go to the grocery store today, let me tell you something. If people needed a raise in their finances, this is the day to be doing it. Because it's really, every time you go there, it's more expensive every week. And we've been dragging our feet all these years about this, and I think you need to jump on it. Whatever you have to do, Shane and Vince, whatever you two gentlemen have to do, and if the union's agreeing, you're already home free. It's just a matter of the commissioners taking a stand on what we believe in this.
Right. And I don't want to release what was initially proposed, but believe me, I mean, both sides did what we needed to do to whittle it down to what a fair package was, and I have to give all the credit in the world to the firefighters because, again, I think initially they proposed a common sense, initial proposal, but wasn't able to cost it all out until Vince and his guys really got a chance to, crunch the numbers. This is not an easy spot for you guys to be in today. You're making this is a difficult workshop, and this is another one of those difficult decisions because you're not necessarily paying for sins of the past, but the past is going to haunt you a little bit. We just are bouncing out of a recession. We're staying in the game as a fire department. We're building a new firehouse, that type of thing. And this is part and parcel. You don't want, you're going to get what you pay for. And when our good guys get recruited away, our ability to recruit good initial entry-level firefighters is going to be very difficult, and we'll get the remainder, and we don't want that. We don't want that in any of our departments, and so that's the only reason why this is coming before you today. You can stay where you're at, but we're going to deal with this constant turnover, which, and if any department, this is probably where you don't want, of all of them, this is where you really want to make sure that you don't have the revolving door syndrome.
Right, we need to be solidified.
Right.
That particular department.
So if you are okay with that, what I'd like to do, if I'm not getting any head shaking, is continue on with their leadership and get one of the attorneys involved. I think Tom took some notes, so he'll be our guy on this, and get the addendum drawn up, get something in front of you that you guys can see, and I think I know what Vince handed out, so you guys know exactly what you're voting on, and then a total package increase. And then we'll get that. I think we should approve that in June or as soon as possible based off of what their union leadership can do in regards to a vote. Is that doable on your end? Yeah, he said they could get it done in a couple of days, so, in time for June's BOC meeting. Hopefully Tom can get what he needs done to issue the addendum. So then what you're doing is opening the contract, inserting this, and then sealing it up, but you're not getting 3 years out of it. You're getting just the remainder of the contract. So there's no shocker in 6 months when Crawford's renegotiating the next contract already. That's where we're at. But what you're doing is catching them up, and so you're going to stop the bleeding. And then what we have to do to get the next contract agreed to, I think both sides kind of understand that it won't be too much of a rich package when it comes to salaries when we're doing the next contract round.
Give me an estimate on overtime. Do you think it's going to be more or less?
I can tell you that at least,
Yeah, on your overtime that you have estimated in here, you have 156 hours. Is that going to be less?
the 156 hours is just standard. They have an agreement where that's just a recurring part of their payroll package.
Right.
The actual overtime incurred, I can tell you that at least tentatively for next year, we've planned a $40,000 reduction in their overtime budget. So hopefully between this and a couple other factors that we're working on with the chief, the overtime budget will definitely be moving in the right direction next year.
Okay.
So the idea being that the overtime should be reduced enough to pay for the plan.
We should hope. Is there any way to renegotiate the contracts between any of our other sister cities that we're in? One of those contracts,
Oh, the Reddingtons, we're, the chief and I are
working on that?
fighting that fight in regards to Seminole taking a lot of the money for the calls in Reddington and that. That's a whole nother deal, but yeah, we are working on that so we can maybe maximize on those as well.
So the 3-year commitment that they make to us, is that started already?
Mhm.
It's already been started?
Yeah.
But they're leaving anyway?
Well, not the guys that we got committed, but I would say in the last 6 months, we probably lost 4 of them, 5 of them maybe, 4 of them. So we lost an entire shift in less than 6 months.
So where does this put them on a scale of regional salary?
Median.
Median.
But not regional comparables, your in-county municipal
Size to
comparables.
size. Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Everything's good so far?
Okay, moving on. The next item on the agenda is discussion of the possible purchase of Don stock.
Thank you again, Madam Vice Mayor. This is going to be quick. I would like to have a special workshop on the day of the Board of Commissioners meeting at 5 o'clock. To have a workshop, Tom, if you can make it, great. If you can't, it's not a big deal. 5:30 would be agenda setting, and then 6 o'clock would be the BOC meeting. The reason for that is we did finally get the people in there that needed to get in there to do a condition report, but we don't have the report back, and there's no reason to rush them on it because we need qualified data in there. So I don't want you to discuss buying something, be like buying a house without getting a appraisal or getting an inspection done. So, but what you do is you have a letter or a memo from Vince on your table here. It takes some time to look at it, and you've really been presented with 3 options, and I think one is just a real common sense approach to doing this, and basically it's very simple, it's very elementary. One is you could pay cash for the whole thing, but I think you put yourself in a spot where you don't want to be in regards to your cash reserves. One is the other one is you could borrow for the whole thing, and I don't think you need to do that either. I think you're in a position where, we had once discussed that we'd take a couple of items out of the budget, do some tit for tat and see what we could get done. And I think you're probably in a position where you could put about 50% cash down, borrow for the other 50%, and get it paid off relatively quickly. And I think that's about as far as I want to go with that without knowing the exact numbers. We haven't even negotiated the sale price on it yet, but I think from what I've discussed with Terry Lister and the rest of you, how we buy this is an issue with not only you but your constituents. You need to discuss this and be able to be educated in it. And so right now you've got some pretty formal numbers on the second page of that memo that would show you that I think the best way to go about this is putting down a significant chunk of cash and borrowing for the rest, which allows year one's never easy in any business, and after year 1, maybe 2 or 3, we start pulling a profit to get this paid off, and the idea being any profit that's above and beyond the debt service would go to that and pay it off as quickly as possible, just like any car loan or any mortgage that you've got. So if there's any questions, I can entertain them, but I'd really like to hold off until we have that condition report. If we get it prior to that meeting, we'll get it out to you. If not, we'll use that meeting to review it, and then we'll revisit this. This is not on the fast track. You don't have to feel pressured into anything. We're probably, within 60 or 90 days of being asked by the owners to sign this pre-purchase agreement that we would take it over in June. I don't think we want to purchase it prior to that and hold the lease until June and work with the tenant that's currently there. I think we should just wait it out and come on in and run our operation. So, are there any questions? Otherwise, we can refer this item then, Madam Vice Mayor, to June 10th, I think is the date. But the next BOC meeting at 5 o'clock, be a special workshop.
All All right, we're moving on to the next item is the discussion on contracting out the code enforcement and building department to Reddington Beach. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I had sent you all over the weekend an email in regards to my concerns. Not that I was blindsided by this, but this was definitely a chicken or the egg type scenario where I got invited to a meeting. They wanted to talk about building official responsibilities and contracting it out to Madeira Beach. So I get to the meeting and they throw in the code enforcement thing, and then they kind of marry the two of them together. And so if we were really interested in that, I believe even in the recruitment profile, I could be wrong, but it was somewhere in print where not only did you guys want to bring back the building department, but you also wanted to see if we could market that to other communities. So this was, something that was on my plate from day one. I'm just not comfortable with it, and you can refer to the email that I sent you, but there's a number of reasons why. I'll leave it to the content of that email. So at this time, I'd like to ask the commission to table it or leave it alone, and I do not want to contract code enforcement or, frankly, our building department to the city of Reddington Beach at this time.
Vote to table it or to just leave it alone?
No, there's no vote that can be taken today. I think you guys can just discuss it if you guys are fine with that. There was never an argument, but, the argument can be made whether or not I can do this administratively and without your vote, or if you need to vote on it. I think there's enough contractual information that you guys would have to vote on it. You know how I work. There's nothing I do that you don't know about. But this was a weird situation, to be honest. It kind of painted me into a corner because I get invited to discuss it, and then they say, are you capable? Well, sure, we're capable. Do we want to do it? Well, that I think is a decision for the board. So you can certainly move forward with it, but my recommendation administratively is to say thanks for the offer, but we're not interested at this time.
Okay.
So we can just lay it down, Shane. Forget it for now.
You can lay it down. You bet.
Let's lay it down. What do you guys think?
Leave it alone.
We need to make a motion, Tom?
No motions. It's a workshop. No action.
Okay, then with that, we'll just move on. The next item is the update on the short-term rentals, and I do believe the city manager wanted it, or?
Sure,
Commissioner?
I can start with it. Commissioner Poe, jump in on me when you need to, but the last time we formally talked about this, we discussed the fact that there's probably a lot of people in town that may not even know that they're violating something. We're always going to have that contingency in town that definitely know they're violating something. But as we even went through this, we discovered different aspects of information in regards to how we could police this, if you will. And it all goes back to the magical date of 2006, when the city of Madeira Beach inserted the 3-month and the 6-month stay in R1 and R2. We found out whenever the last time we talked about this, Attorney Trask gave us his opinion that R3 is nothing that we can do about that. And, you remember there was 2 gals from a certain condo association here, and they said, geez, how can you let us hang here? Well, that's why there are condo associations, and that's why there are attorneys that represent condo associations. So they have to, it's a little bit of narc on your neighbor, but it is in the streets too. So that being said, I put together, and this took a great deal of time because I think the wording and the verbiage is very important. But this is going to go out to every single property owner in Madeira Beach, whether or not you live in Madeira Beach or you live in California or you live in Italy, you're going to get this letter. And it's going to walk you through whether or not you owned the criteria on your property prior to and post 2006. The 2 things that, and Tom just had a chance to quick look at this. If you read the letter, the meat and potatoes are the bullet points. So if the property was owned prior to 2006 and it's been consistently rented as a short-term rental since 2006 and prior to it, it's grandfathered in. It can be a short-term lease no matter who you live next to, no matter where it's at, as long as it's in R1 and R2, they can do it as a short-term rental. If the property was purchased after 2006, but since 2006, or at least since the amendment, it was consistently rented out as a short-term rental, it's grandfathered in, and it can be used as a short-term rental. And then I put in there, if the intended use of the property will be as a short-term rental, they have to prove to us that it was a short-term rental at 2006 or at least prior to and beyond. So they can use, you know, a city business tax receipt, rental agreements, you know, whatever verification that they can use. Bed tax, right, exactly. And then that's, I'm glad you hit on that, because that's the real reason for the following, the subsequent 3 bullet points. So they need to know that they're running a business and they have to pull a business tax license from the city of Madera Beach. But then Commissioner Poe's issue in regards to, hey, they're getting away with not paying bed tax and they're getting away with doing this, this, and this, which really isn't our fight to fight, so to speak, but we all benefit as a community because if they do pay their bed tax. And Tom's going to check on this. He's going to verify the verbiage that's in there in regards to Florida Statute 509, but then also, at least at a minimum, also at the time of applying for the Madera Beach business tax receipt under bullet point item 3, provide proof that the property is registered and you obtained a, whatever the verbiage that Tom gives me, maybe a bed tax registration form or whatever that is with the county, with Diane Nelson's office, so that we're implying that you have to be registered with the county and you will pay your bed tax if you're renting a short-term rental in Madera Beach. At least that gives them a punch, if you will, in the right direction. So this is really step 1 of maybe steps 3 and 4 to get our arms around this. The reason that I said let's hold off on the chronic nuisance ordinance is I think you're going to find a lot of this is going to be grandfathered in. But they have to prove it, and if they can't prove it, it's not grandfathered in. And so we need some time after we send this out and people start coming in to comply to really get our hands on this. And it might even take more than 6 months, but I think it's going to be the people that have been complying and working with us in a legitimate fashion, it's going to be no problem. The ones that want to skirt the rules, they're going to have some issues, and we're going to have to deal with that administratively. So, Commissioner Poe, I don't know if you have anything further to add. I sent this to you for your edit. I think it was, you said it was fine. Tom's going to just verify those 2 subsequent bullet points, and I really want staff to get this out by the end of the week after I hear from Tom.
It's a start. It's been a long time coming. It's a start. Just to give you guys a brief update, when I started this in February, or when I went to Tallahassee in February, I actually started this in November of last year. I uncovered 1,000. By the first workshop in April, we had 1,880. The last count was 1,916. So, I mean, we're being overrun.
Yeah.
So somehow we've got to determine, are we going to run them at counter residential areas, or are we going back to doing residential?
Well, and I think it's going to be a careful balance with who was doing it prior to 2006. I mean, that's where our hands are tied. The other part of this, and Tom I know is still working on it when we met with him last, is call them whatever you want, cease and desist letters or whatever to these websites that are renting these for these owners, saying, hey, make sure that you understand that these criteria have to be met to be a short-term rental in the city of Madera Beach. And Tom's working on that, and we'll get that out as well. And so it's definitely only one step, but I think it's definitely the right first step, and then we'll follow it up from there.
I agree.
Are you sending that to these people that are hired out to do this also?
That's the websites, basically, the property management companies, that type of thing. The property management companies are probably the most complying group around. And again, I want to give these owners as much credit as I possibly can. We just went through a nasty time in our nation's history, and I think a lot of governments said, hey, if you can rent out your house for a weekend and save your mortgage, go for it. We're going to look the other way. But now we're coming out of that, and we can't just let that continue on. So, again, it's cut and dry. Commissioner Poe and I had this conversation. If you were running it before 2006 and after consistently, you're in. Case closed. Just prove it to us. And if there was ever a time where you didn't rent it as a short-term rental, you're not grandfathered in. It's over. And so the criteria are simple. So I think this will be, one of the easier things that we have to, administratively police. And then, we both know Luckett and Lawson are all over this thing. They know who the infractors are. We know where we got to go after this goes out. But I think we'll get a lot of compliance out of this.
Are we going to give them a specific time to come
After they get this, they're on notice, as far as I'm concerned, and if they continue to do that, we'll be busting them.
90 days, starting,
We can certainly include that if you want me to. I just, you know, the last note, you know, I said failure to comply, you're gonna get a daily fine of $500, and then you know, if everybody knows that we're staffed and funded to do this, to get it taken care of. So I think what we want is immediate response, not to delay it. The beauty of this is we're going right into the business tax renewal season, so it's time to get it done. So we'll nail it all at the same time.
Let me point one more thing out to you before we end this one, is we are no longer October to January or February, March, or April. We are now a year-round rental site in Madeira Beach. I have pulled enough calendars that I know they're booked all the way to May of 2015. So we have a lot of, it's continuously, people cannot find a place to live in Madeira Beach for more than 6 months. So this is a good step to get it started.
Yep, if you come up, you gotta do the whole drill all over again.
We've forgotten you already.
James Moore, 13708 Salem Street. Well, one was just to point out, because you mentioned the bed tax number. If I understand correctly, this goes toward the burden of proof of being grandfathered in. State law actually says that before any local municipality may issue a rental license, the property first must have a state transient lodging license. I would think they better show up with their state lodging license and prove that they had that since 2006.
That's my attempt in the second bullet point under Florida Statute 509. So that's the verbiage that the attorney is checking on, but that's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, and I guess the other point is it can't be both ways.
Right.
If they're transient lodging, then they should have all kinds of records.
Right.
Yet there are people that are renting that make an awful lot of noise saying, it's just my friends and relatives. What do you mean I'm violating the law? And it really can't work both ways, can it?
No, it can't.
Okay.
So it has to be consistently rented as a short-term rental, and you know, to do that, you'd have a lot of relatives and friends if you're giving it out that much. So the burden of proof is going to be on the property owner,
Okay.
and so if they're doing it consistently and responsibly, and they'll have no problem. They'll have all the records that they need to prove.
So if they come in to get a city license, then they should have to show proof of their state lodging license.
That's what this is saying.
Okay, good, thank you.
Marilyn McGinley, North Bay Shore. My question is, if a property owner, say out-of-state property owner, ignores this letter and says, can I say, have a house in my neighborhood or next door that is renting out short-term, and I have a question about whether it's legal or not, how do I determine that?
Call code enforcement. Code
Okay.
enforcement will be knocking on doors. They already are.
Okay.
Yep, so you call the gentleman in the back, he'll give you his phone number. If you've got a problem property, it's horrible because it really puts you in a difficult spot because you got an arc on your neighbor. But if your neighbor is
Doesn't bother
living
me.
in Texas, you know, and you're cool with it, there you go. But that's what we need out of the community. You can't.
We have to police ourselves in
Well,
addition to.
you got to help us out.
Yeah.
You know, we're not out there 100% of the time, so we need to know where the problem areas are, and that gentleman in the back is the guy that needs to know.
Yeah, I'm also just wondering, just to follow up on Commissioner Lister's question as to whether we should have a date. I mean, if I'm a property owner, I mean, you're saying you assume that once, that this is effective on receipt of the letter to the property owner.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm enforcing this the day after this letter is received, and I'm not waiting 3 months for them to comply. I'm going to start knocking on doors next Monday.
Okay, but if I'm an out-of-state property owner, even a conscientious out-of-state property owner who has purchased or who's renting it legally, but I have to get all my papers together.
Mhm.
And if, say, my neighbor reports that house, to the code enforcement officer. Then the code enforcement officer will go to the property owner
We're gonna
and say,
contact the property owner and
okay,
say,
and get all the
the
paperwork
burden of
in.
proof is on you. You might be doing this by the book. Just show us this,
Okay.
this, and this, and you're fine.
Right.
If they can't, then we go another route.
Right, okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, come on up.
Good afternoon. I hope you all had a great holiday weekend. Deputy Laws, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I have the esteemed pleasure of being your code enforcement officer. Oh, this is for you. I had door private. Okay. In regards to that process, just want to make you aware of it so you can share this with your neighbors. That in the event. Oh, okay. Great. In the event that that happens, and once that letter is sent, okay, the ball starts rolling. There's game on. They've already sung the Star Spangled Banner, said the Pledge of Allegiance, and now it's on. We will carefully monitor those properties that are in violation because they haven't proven what the letter said. And with the help of you and other kind people like Mr. Moore, letting us know where they are, we'll knock on the doors, do our secret squirrel stuff to figure out who's there, if they're actually relatives or not. We have resources to find out special things, tie them into the owner. At that time, we will notify the owner if they're out of state with a mailing, both regular mail and registered mail, making them aware they're in violation. This is ways to comply. And they don't comply, then we'll send them a greeting card where they come and meet with Mr. Trask at a public hearing. Okay? I hope I answered pretty much of that. And also, I'm going to talk with our state attorney in regards to what power I have of making sure I can see their ledger of who their relatives and things of that nature under the 509. All right. Any questions for me? Great. Thank you.
You have your work cut out for you.
Any more discussion? We'll move on to the next item, which is a discussion on ordinance 2014-4 to length of vehicles to be, length of vehicle up to 18 feet in length.
Yeah, Ms. Vice Mayor, if I can take that, Dick Lewis is in the audience, and he caught this, and it was a good catch, because I think anybody on the commission or anybody who was at the meeting that passed this remembered it differently than what was codified, and that's what we came into. The C and I had a conversation this morning. Previous board, previous commissioner wanted this done, and it was all in regards to reserving 6 spots in a certain parking lot for these to have anything over 18 feet to park in. The 6 spots never made it, and you know, I can't say whose fault that is, but really the way that your ordinance reads now is what staff recommends. So what you're saying is anything over 18 feet in length is not allowed in any of these lots. The other thing that we'd like to do as staff is basically say we're not really in favor, and neither is the Sheriff's Department. We discussed it at the department head meeting this morning, saying sure, come get a permit and park in Archibald Park and sleep in your Winnebago overnight. We don't have pump-out facilities, you know, there's liability associated with that, so on and so forth. Since I've been here in 2.5 years, we've had 2 requests, and we've sort of accommodated them on an as-needed basis, and as those come in, I think we would just handle that administratively. So at the end of the day, after all that conversation at the last meeting, we don't want a change at all, because what made the books is what we want. What was said that night and what we talked about is they don't coincide. So what's on paper here is what we want, and we're fine with that.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Mr. Lewis, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank you. All right. Okay, is there any other business that we need to discuss?
Just from my end, a couple of things. One is Archibald Park is, I would say, 99% complete. If you've seen it during the day, it's something to be seen. You know what you need to do is at 9 o'clock at night, drive by that baby at night. It's pretty cool. The lights are hooked up as about 2 hours ago, all the lighting. The only thing that you may see is the palms have two different lensed light on it. One's an amber light and one's a bright light. Well, one's a turtle light and one's a normal light. And they didn't understand when we ordered that we would just switch those heads out. So there'll be a consistent light, but right now the two lights are on just because those are the only heads we got. Dave's staff will change those out between, turtle season and non-turtle season or whatever you call it. So Archibald is done, but the snack shack's about 3 weeks away. So they were shooting for Memorial Day. They didn't hit it. That's all right. We'll be okay. The Big C meets tomorrow in Hawaiian shirts and shorts out on the deck there. Cheryl's got everything good to go. I think she's doing party favors over there now as we speak. So people start showing up at 8 o'clock. Parking, Archibald parking lot, there will be no fee for parking for anyone for the meeting. But take a look at what's going on the deck as well. There's some tiki-type structures, and what they are just glorified picnic tables with roofs over them, frankly. They've spared no expense in the work that they're doing is incredible. I'm very impressed with them, so that's good. If you look around here, we're about, I'd say, a week and a half ahead of schedule here on the City Hall project and the rec center and the fire station. That being said, and I think you probably got a crabby email from me over the weekend as well, it came to Dave and I late in the day, and Dave was hospitalized last week, and that's always a challenge, but we found that we might have to relocate our summer program so we can do away with those buildings, and from a utility perspective, if we do that, we'll save some money on the project, which we can save here, but we know that we'll overspend somewhere else, and so we want to create that type of flexibility. So if you get any constituent calls, we have a construction meeting tomorrow at 9. Unfortunately, I can't get in with the principal until about noon, but Dave and I and Vince and our rec director are going to go see Principal Atik and see if we can't run the summer program out of the middle school, which, to be quite honest, is probably a better situation than what we've got currently. Not that our place is so decrepit, but add a construction zone on top of that, and it's maybe not the best for a summer program. Basically, the idea was we're going to take them out. There would be a lot of field trips this summer, let's just say that. And so we're going to try to adjust that. But you might get some scuttlebutt. Oh, man, they had to misplace the softball leagues. They had to do away with the summer program. Well, we displaced them. We didn't eliminate them. Our leagues are playing in St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island, and the kids will be just at a different location. So we're keeping everything rolling while we keep the project on time and, certainly under budget. So with that, Memorial Day was a success. The one thing that you're going to see from me, and I probably got another crabby email about it over the weekend, is we just passed this parking ordinance, and it never occurred to, and it's my fault, I should have caught it. We should have easily added Memorial Day and Labor Day to that parking ordinance. So we had a lot of people parking cars that were not permitted. No one got in trouble for it. No one got fined for it. They were asked to come on in and get a parking permit this week. I authorized it over the weekend to be one of those city manager holidays, but we should return to the ordinance and add those two in there. So C was notified of that this morning. She'll get it on the next agenda. Tom, if you could make that adjustment in those ordinances, that's something staff would certainly endorse. Everyone was behaved. It was a safe weekend. Everything was great, and the parking lots did well, let's just say that. So with that, if anybody has any, the one other thing, Commissioner Shantz and I had a meeting this morning with the store owners along Madeira Way. That midweek market was kind of dividing the street. It worked for one side, not the other. The postmaster and I had a disagreement last week, and the Bronze Lady owners were not, some things were working for some groups and some were not, I think is a fair thing to say, Commissioner Shantz. And so what we did is we got everybody in the same room today. Let's just say we kind of worked it all out. I've already got a meeting slated next week with Dick in regards to Barry Loft's property and how we can do some inventive parking and some traffic flow and stuff like that. And it's going to work out for everybody. Everybody that came today was very nice, very cordial, and it's going to continue on. It's one of the few things that I say that we've done that I've actually gotten calls that are complimenting it. So people, the community loves it, but if you have to make a living on Madeira Way, obviously it's a concern to some of them at least, and so we got to make it work for everybody, and that was the thing this morning. So if you get any scuttlebutt on that, we're in the process of making it work for everybody. Everyone is on board, and I think in a week or two we'll have all the kinks worked out.
Okay, and this Friday is the Flip-Flop Friday still, or?
No, Flip-Flop Fridays, I keep saying that. It was a flop the first time around, but the gal that's running it was recruited by some shop owners on Madeira Way, and it's a agency or a company out of Tampa, and so their first time around, being new to the area, for lack of a better term, they just didn't know the players to talk to in town. So I called her. It was funny because I said, you know, geez, in Madeira Beach, if you want people to come out on a Friday night, you got to have, you know, a reason for them to come out, and that usually involves some good food and some good cold beer. And neither one of those were present at the first one. And then, you know, there was maybe not a sad showing, but a minuscule showing of vendors as well. So there was really no reason to be there. So that she's really amped it up. In fact, I think so. Anyway, they took this month off. And they'll start up in June, and it'll always be the fourth Friday. And the vendors love that, both sides, because for the post office side and that group, it's after business hours, they don't care. And the other group really loves it because it gives them exposure. But I think it's got something to do with bring your dog. I don't have to show you. It's bring your pet, but there'll be good food and good drinks, and I think it'll be a much different venue than what you saw the first time around. So this month is canceled,
Okay.
and then it'll start up in June, and it'll go every month.
Okay, great.
So, any other comments on that midweek market? We got a little criticism because of the day of the week, and the problem is it's so saturated on the weekends where you really lose your attendance, so to speak. So this midweek one, people love, and they come from all over the place because it's the only one of its kind. So I'd like to.
Excuse me.
I've only heard good things about it. Good things. Nice people down there on the street. Very nice, congenial. I'm from, like as far away as Plant City.
Yeah, they're coming from a ways around. The organizers are second to none. They obviously have their stuff together. They know what they're doing. And like I said, we'll make it work for everybody in town. I know we get complaints from Reddington. Well, I didn't know Madeira Way was closed. Go another block and turn left. You know, I don't want to be that guy, but it really comes down to that. You know, and if we can figure out a way for them to access the Bronze Lady and the post office, 99% of the argument is over, I think. So we'll get it all taken.
Shane, I have a question. Some time ago, in a conversation, I don't know, it was a workshop or a meeting, it was mentioned about the poles on Gulf Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, I had my little say about all the wooden poles we have on there that we don't even. You said the lighting's gonna be similar to what we have at Archibald Park.
Similar.
Is it gonna be something like those hangover? Oh,
Similar.
great.
Yeah. The ornate ambiance, if you will, at Archibald is what we're speccing for you to approve when you do the utility burying. So you're probably 12 months away from having to approve that spec and probably 18 months away from the construction of it. That's where Terry's bus stops come into play again and the utility burying goes. If you haven't noticed, that whole intersection by Archibald now is buried. It's night and day different. Night and day different. I know it took a while to get that completely buried, but it's quite the scene.
Excuse me, those lights are very unique.
Yep.
And they're gonna look really neat going down
Yeah.
Boulevard. And it's gonna be different than any other of these communities.
Yeah.
So that's what I like. It's gonna be outstanding and different.
In the next week or two, consciously make an effort to go see Archibald at night. It's just.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's something, and you're right. You can take a look at that and say, now can you picture that up and down Gulf Boulevard? And that again, that's what all that beautification money will go for. So we're in good shape.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, well, before I close the meeting, I just want to thank the audience for staying with us during the workshop. Thank you for being here and participating, okay?
And Vice Mayor, you did a fantastic job. Your
Thank
first
you.
time around there, that was well done.
Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and close the meeting, and it is now 3:55.